Let me tell you something. I've always been a guy in the background, the one nobody notices until everything falls apart. My name is Elias Thornfield, and I'm the operations director at Prysm Financial, a fintech startup based in New York City. We're not just another company. We're the company everyone's talking about right now. Blockchain payments, AI-driven analytics, cutting-edge tech. It's all here. But behind those shiny press releases and glowing investor pitches, chaos. Pure chaos. And guess who keeps it from imploding? That's right, me. I've been with PRYSM since its infancy, back when it was just 3 guys coding in a cramped Soho loft. Now, we're 100 employees strong, with offices overlooking the Hudson River and enough VC money to choke a whale. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, don't let the glass walls and espresso machines fool you. The truth is, our CEO, Victor Langley, is less of a leader and more of a glorified figurehead who spends most of his time schmoozing investors and taking credit for other people's work. Meanwhile, I'm the one holding the sinking ship together, with duct tape, prayers, and an unhealthy amount of caffeine. Every day feels like walking a tightrope. One misstep, and the whole operation could come crashing down. But hey, that's my job, right? Keep the gears turning, make sure the trains run on time, and stay invisible while doing it. At least, that's how it used to be. Because lately, things have started feeling off. It began subtly at first, so subtle I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Budget approvals slowed to a crawl. Emails went unanswered. Meetings that once included me were suddenly executive only. Then there were the whispers. You know the kind. The hushed conversations that stop abruptly when you walk into the room. People think I don't notice. But trust me, I do. One evening, after yet another 12-hour day, I grabbed coffee with Noah Patel, our lead software engineer and one of the few people I actually trust around here. Over stale bagels and lukewarm lattes, he leaned in and said, "Elias, you hear anything about layoffs?" Layoffs. I scoffed, though my stomach churned at the thought. We're killing it out there. Why would Victor cut staff now? Noah shrugged. Just rumors. But they're saying it might hit your department hardest. I laughed it off, mostly to convince myself. Layoffs? Me? The guy who single-handedly kept this place from collapsing during last year's server meltdown? Ridiculous. Still, as I walked home that night, I couldn't shake the nagging doubt gnawing at the edges of my mind. Something wasn't right. Not even close. 2 days later, I got summoned to Victor's office. A rare occurrence unless he needed someone to fix whatever mess he created. When I arrived, he greeted me with that smug smile of his, the one that made my skin crawl. "Elias," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "How are things going?" "Keeping busy, I assume." "Always," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "What can I do for you, Victor?" He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers like some Bond villain. "Well, Elias, I've been thinking. You've done incredible work here, truly invaluable. But maybe it's time for you to explore new opportunities. Expand your horizons, so to speak." My jaw tightened. "Are you firing me?" "Oh, no, nothing like that." He chuckled nervously. "Just suggesting it might be time for a change. For both of us." I stared at him, incredulous. This guy had the audacity to try and oust me without even having the guts to say it outright. I wanted to scream, to throw something heavy across his pristine desk. Instead, I stood up, nodded curtly, and walked out. As I closed the door behind me, I muttered under my breath, "You will regret this, Victor. Mark my words." After that meeting, I knew I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. If Victor thought he could push me out quietly, he was dead wrong. I started digging, carefully, discreetly. Late nights became my ally as I sifted through budget reports, internal memos, and project timelines. What I found chilled me to the bone. Victor wasn't just planning layoffs. He was dismantling entire departments, outsourcing core functions, cutting corners wherever possible, all to pad his own pockets and impress the board. It was reckless, short-sighted, and downright dangerous. Worse still, it seemed like HR was complicit. Sophie Bennett, the HR director, had signed off on several questionable decisions, including slashing resources from teams I managed. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. How dare they treat loyal employees like disposable assets? And how dare Victor think he could get away with it? I needed help, and fast. Noah was the obvious choice. He'd been by my side since day one. But I also reached out to Clara Martinez, one of our senior data analysts. She'd always been skeptical of Victor and agreed to assist without hesitation. Together, we devised a plan, document every critical contribution I'd made to the company over the years, along with evidence of Victor's incompetence. But not everyone was on board. When I approached Sophie, hoping to appeal to her sense of morality, she shut me down immediately. "Elias," she said, her voice trembling, "you don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just about you or Victor. There are bigger forces at play here." Her cryptic warning only fueled my determination. Bigger forces? Fine. Bring it on. A week later, Victor called me into his office again. This time, his tone was colder, sharper. "Elias," he snapped, "I gave you a chance to lead gracefully. Instead, you're stirring up trouble. Do you really want to burn bridges over this?" I met his gaze head on. "Burn bridges? Victor, you're the one playing with fire. You forget I'm the reason this company hasn't fallen apart already. Try to push me out, and you'll see exactly how much you need me." For a moment, he looked genuinely rattled. Then his mask slipped back into place, and he smirked. "We'll see about that." As I left his office, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The game was on, and I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. After my second confrontation with Victor, I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. It wasn't just about saving my job anymore. It was about protecting the people who had poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this company. So, I called an emergency meeting with Noah, Clara, and a few other trusted colleagues in a quiet corner of the office cafeteria late one evening. "Listen up," I said, leaning forward. "Victor's trying to gut this place piece by piece. He thinks he can sweep us aside like we're nothing. But he's wrong. We are Prysm Financial. Without us, there is no Prysm." Noah nodded, his usual sarcastic grin replaced by steely resolve. "So what's the plan, boss? How we take him down?" I hesitated for a moment, then laid it all out. "First, we document everything. Every project, every success, every time Victor tried to take credit for our work. Second, we build alliances. Talk to your teams, quietly. Let them know what's at stake. And third," I paused, locking eyes with each of them, "we prepare to strike back. Hard." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You realize how risky this is, right? If Victor finds out." "He won't," I interrupted firmly. "Not until it's too late." By the end of the meeting, I could feel the energy shift. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't alone. We were a team again, a united front against Victor's tyranny. Victor didn't waste any time retaliating. The very next morning, I arrived at work to find my access revoked from several key systems. My calendar was cleared of all upcoming meetings, and emails I sent to senior staff went unanswered. Worse still, projects that relied on my oversight were reassigned to inexperienced managers handpicked by Victor. It was chaos. Deadlines slipped. Systems crashed. Employees scrambled to pick up the pieces, while Victor strutted around the office like some self-proclaimed savior. But here's the thing about chaos. It gives you opportunities if you know where to look. While Victor focused on sidelining me, I worked behind the scenes to stabilize the situation. I coached junior staff through crises via encrypted messages. I rerouted critical tasks through unofficial channels. And when Victor announced a high-stakes client demo schedule for the following week, I made sure to leave subtle vulnerabilities in the presentation materials. Call insurance or poetic justice. One night, as I rummaged through old files stored on PRSM's internal server, I stumbled upon something that stopped me cold. Buried deep within a folder labeled confidential expenses were records of unauthorized bonuses paid directly to Victor and a handful of his cronies during periods when the company claimed to be struggling financially. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the documents. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was outright fraud. Worse yet, the payments traced back to shell companies linked to rival firms. Victor wasn't just incompetent. He was complicit in a corporate conspiracy designed to sabotage Prysm from within. For a moment, I sat frozen, staring at the screen. Then anger surged through me, hot and unrelenting. Victor thought he could destroy this company and walk away scot-free? Not on my watch. I copied the files onto a secure drive and forwarded anonymized excerpts to Marcus Reed, one of the board members who had always been skeptical of Victor's leadership. The message was simple. If you care about Prysm, read this. The response came faster than I expected. Marcus emailed me the next day, requesting an urgent meeting. When we met in a dimly lit conference room after hours, he looked grim but resolute. "This is bad," he said, flipping through the documents I'd provided. "Really bad. If these allegations are true, Victor's not just unfit to lead, he's a liability." "They're true," I replied flatly, "and there's more where that came from." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right, here's what we're going to do. You keep gathering evidence. Meanwhile, I'll reach out to a few key players on the board. We need to present a united front before we make our move." As I left the meeting, I felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't fighting this battle alone. But I also knew the hardest part was yet to come. Victor wouldn't go down without a fight, and neither would I. Victor's big investor pitch was supposed to be his crowning achievement, a flashy display of Prysm's innovation and growth potential. The event took place in a sleek Manhattan penthouse overlooking Central Park, complete with champagne towers and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I attended reluctantly, knowing full well that Victor intended to use the occasion to solidify his grip on the company. As he stepped onto the stage, bathed in spotlights and flanked by PowerPoint slides boasting exaggerated metrics, I couldn't help but marvel at his audacity. But then, the glitches started. First, the presentation froze mid-slide. Then, the audio cut out entirely. Panic rippled to the crowd as Victor frantically signaled for technical support. Behind the scenes, I watched with quiet satisfaction as my carefully planned vulnerabilities wreaked havoc. When Victor finally managed to regain control, he launched into a rambling explanation of Prysm's visionary strategies, all of which I recognized as ideas stolen from my team. That's when I decided to intervene. Stepping onto the stage, I grabbed the microphone from Victor's trembling hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, addressing the stunned audience, "allow me to clarify a few things. While Mr. Langley has been busy taking credit for others' hard work, the real innovation at Prysm comes from the dedicated professionals you rarely hear about, the engineers, analysts, and operations teams who keep this company running day in and day out." I proceeded to outline specific achievements, citing data and anecdotes that painted a far more accurate picture of Prysm's success. By the time I finished, the room erupted in applause, not for Victor, but for the unsung heroes of the company. Victor stood off to the side, livid but powerless. For the first time, everyone saw him for what he truly was, a fraud. Later that night, I received a text from Marcus. It's time. The next morning, copies of the financial records I'd uncovered landed in the inboxes of every board member and major investor. Within hours, the scandal exploded. Headlines blare across tech news outlets. Prysm CEO accused of fraud amid internal power struggle. Victor's attempts to defend himself only dug his grave deeper. During a hastily arranged press conference, he stumbled over his words, contradicting himself repeatedly until even his staunchest supporters turned against him. The final showdown took place in Prysm's boardroom, where tensions ran high. Victor, visibly shaken, tried to argue that the accusations were baseless and politically motivated. But Marcus and I presented irrefutable evidence of his misconduct, leaving no room for denial. "You betrayed this company," Marcus declared, slamming a folder onto the table. "And now you will answer for it." One by one, the board members voiced their condemnation. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Victor was removed as CEO effective immediately. In the wake of Victor's downfall, the board offered me the interim CEO position. At first, I hesitated. Running a company wasn't something I'd ever envisioned for myself. But then I thought about my team, the people who had fought alongside me, and realized I owed it to them to see this through. "I'll do it," I said finally, "but only until we find someone better suited for the role long term." The relief in the room was palpable. For the first time in months, PRYSM had a leader who actually cared about its future. Just when I thought the worst was over, Sophie approached me with a smug smile and a threat. "Elias," she said, holding a flash drive, "you may have won this round, but don't think I don't have dirt on you, too. Unless you step aside quietly, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've done." Her betrayal stung, but I refused to let her intimidate me. Instead, I smiled back. "Go ahead, Sophie. Leak whatever you want. Because unlike Victor, I have nothing to hide." Her confidence faltered, and I knew I'd won. Sophie's threat lingered in my mind like a storm cloud, but I quickly realized her bark was far worse than her bite. When she tried to dig up dirt on me, all she found was a decade of hard work, integrity, and loyalty to Prysm Financial. There were no skeletons in my closet, just receipts of late-night emails, problem-solving memos, and team-saving strategies. I decided to use her own tactics against her. With Clara's help, I uncovered evidence that Sophie had been complicit in Victor's schemes, not just passively following orders, but actively enabling his corruption. She'd sign off on fraudulent expense reports and even facilitated backdoor deals with rival companies. Armed with this information, I confronted her directly during a private meeting. "You want to play dirty, Sophie?" I said, sliding the incriminating documents across the table. "Fine, but remember this. If you take me down, you're going down with me." Her face turned pale as she stared at the papers. For once, she didn't have a snappy comeback or a manipulative smile. Instead, she muttered something about needing time to think before rushing out of the room. By the end of the week, she resigned quietly, leaving behind only a hastily written note of apology addressed to HR. Victory felt sweet, but hollow. Every betrayal, every act of sabotage reminded me how fragile trust could be in corporate America. Still, I couldn't dwell on it. PRYSM needed me now more than ever. As interim CEO, my first priority was rebuilding the company from the ground up, not just operationally, but culturally. Too many employees had been treated as expendable cogs in Victor's machine. I wanted them to feel valued again, to know that their contributions mattered. I started by hosting town halls where anyone could voice concerns or suggestions without fear of retaliation. Then, I implemented transparency measures, open financial reports, regular updates on major decisions, and clear communication channels between departments. It wasn't easy. Some executives resisted change, while others doubted whether such radical shifts would stick. But slowly, things began to improve. Noah joked that I was turning into a corporate therapist, but I didn't mind. Seeing the spark return to my colleagues' eyes made every sleepless night worth it. One moment stood out in particular. After announcing a new initiative to promote diversity and inclusion within the company, a young developer named Maya approached me after the meeting. Her voice trembled as she thanked me for finally making her feel like she belonged. "It's not just about coding anymore," she said. "It's about being part of something bigger." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Maybe this job wasn't just about fixing problems. It was about creating opportunities for others to thrive. For the first time in months, I allowed myself a moment to breathe. Sitting alone on the rooftop terrace of our office building, I watched the city lights flicker in the distance. The adrenaline rush of the past few weeks had faded, replaced by a quiet exhaustion that seeped into my bones. I thought about everything I'd sacrificed to get here. The friendships strained, the weekends missed, the constant weight of responsibility pressing down on me. Was it worth it? Then I remembered the faces of my team. Their laughter during brainstorming sessions. Their determination when deadlines loomed. Their gratitude when they realized someone actually cared about them. Yes, it was worth it. But I also knew I couldn't keep going like this forever. My life outside of work had become a ghost town. Friends stopped inviting me to events because they assumed I'd cancel last minute. Family dinners were rare occurrences marked by awkward silences and unanswered questions. Even my dog, Max, seemed to give me side-eye whenever I walked to the door too late to take him for a walk. I promised myself I'd find balance. Eventually, for now, though PRYSM still needed me. Under my leadership, PRYSM Financial transformed. Investors regained confidence in the company, praising its renewed focus on innovation and ethical practices. Employees who had once feared layoffs now spoke proudly of their work, knowing their efforts contributed to something meaningful. The media dubbed me the unlikely hero of fintech, a title I found both amusing and slightly embarrassing. Reporters hounded me for interviews, eager to hear the story of how I single-handedly saved a sinking ship. But I always redirected the attention to my team. "This isn't about me," I told one journalist during a particularly persistent interview. "It's about proving that success doesn't have to come at the expense of integrity." That's what PRYSM stand for now. Behind the scenes, I worked tirelessly to ensure the company remained stable long after I stepped away. I mentored promising leaders within the organization, preparing them to take over when the time came. And when Marcus introduced me to a seasoned executive named Rachel Kim, who shared my vision for ethical leadership, I knew I'd found the right successor. On my last day as interim CEO, I gathered the entire company in the main conference room. As I stood before them, I felt a mix of pride and bittersweet nostalgia. When I took this role, I began, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. I never imagined I'd stay this long. But looking around this room today, I realize there's nowhere else I'd rather be. You've taught me what it means to lead, not through power or authority, but through collaboration and trust. I paused, scanning the sea of familiar faces. PRYSM is in good hands now. Rachel will guide you into the future, and I have no doubt you'll continue to achieve incredible things. As for me, I smiled softly. Well, let's just say I'm ready for a little less chaos in my life. The applause that followed was deafening, filling the room with warmth and gratitude. As I walked out of the building for the final time, I felt lighter, as if a weight I hadn't even noticed carrying had finally lifted. A week later, I received a plain white envelope in the mail. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "They'll never know you saved them twice." Confused, I flipped the page over, searching for more clues. There was nothing, no signature, no explanation, just those cryptic words staring back at me. At first, I dismissed it as a prank or some lingering attempt at intimidation. But curiosity got the better of me. Digging deeper into old files, I discovered something shocking. Victor hadn't acted alone. His fraudulent activities were part of a larger scheme orchestrated by a shadowy consortium of rival companies aiming to dismantle PRYSM Financial from the inside. The revelation sent chills down my spine. If I hadn't exposed Victor when I did, PRYSM might have collapsed entirely, and no one would have known why. I debated whether to share this new information with the board, or even with Rachel, but ultimately decided against it. Some secrets were better left buried. Besides, PRYSM was safe now. Whatever threats lurked in the shadows, they'd underestimated us once, and they wouldn't dare try again. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I reached out to old friends, reconnected with family, and spent countless hours playing fetch with Max in Central Park. Life felt simpler, happier. Still, whenever I passed by PRYSM's headquarters, I couldn't help but smile. Somewhere deep inside, I knew I'd left an indelible mark, not just on the company, but on the people who called it home. Months later, as I sat in a cozy cafe sipping coffee and reading a book, I reflected on everything that had happened. The battles fought, the alliances forged, the sacrifices made. It all felt like another lifetime. Yet the lessons remained etched in my mind. Leadership isn't about titles or accolades. It's about showing up when it matters most. Success isn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the lives you touch along the way. And sometimes, the greatest victories are the ones no one sees. As I closed my book and prepared to leave, I glanced out the window and caught sight of a young professional hurrying past, briefcase in hand. He looked stressed, overwhelmed, just like I used to. "Hey," I called out impulsively, "take a break sometime. The world won't fall apart if you step away for 5 minutes." He blinked, startled, then laughed nervously. "Thanks," he muttered before continuing on his way. I chuckled to myself, shaking my head. Maybe I wasn't done mentoring just yet. After all, the fight for integrity never truly ends.